Do you wish that all things wealth and finance were much easier to understand and not presented by a bunch of beige cardigan-wearing geeks? Welcome to the Clever Investor Podcast, where we're dishing up the easiest to understand finance program served in bite-sized chunks, so your brain will thank you as your knowledge grows. Hosted by the brilliant Owen Taylor, a multiple award-winning expert with a glorious knack for explaining the complex world of wealth in the simplest of ways.
Hey, clever investors, and welcome to another show. Have you ever wondered where all the numbers and the facts and figures about Australia actually come from? Well, a big part of the job is done by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, or as we shorten it down to, the ABS. These guys are an absolute treasure trove of information. So imagine that you're curious about how many people live in Australia, how many babies are born each year, or how many people actually have jobs at a certain point in time. Well, the ABS is the place for these kind of answers. Its main role is to collect, analyse, and share all sorts of information about Australia and its people. One of the ABS's main tasks is to conduct something called a census. Now, a census is like a big survey that happens every 5 years here in Australia, where almost everyone is asked a whole bunch of questions about things like your age, where you live, what job you do, and even what languages you speak at home. The information collected from the census helps the government plan things like schools, hospitals, public transport, and based on our different needs within our communities. But the team at the ABS don't just stop at the census. It also gathers data from all around the country on a regular basis. This data comes from surveys and studies that cover a wide range of topics, from economics, environment, and all the way to education and health issues. This information helps us and our politicians understand how the country is changing and growing. Now, once the ABS collects this data, it goes to work analysing it. And it's like solving a big puzzle. The ABS experts start to crunch the numbers to find out patterns and trends. They then turn all that raw data into easy to understand reports, graphs, charts, so that any one of us can actually go and access this information. Now, this helps people like the researchers at Blue Wealth Property, journalists, and even businesses, and the regular folks like you and I learn more about Australia. One of the other important things the ABS does is to make sure the information it collects is accurate and very reliable. Imagine if somebody accidentally counted a group of people twice in a large survey. Now that's really going to start to mess up the big picture. So to avoid any big mistakes, the ABS need to use special methods to make sure that data is accurate as possible. This way, the information they share can be very much trusted by all of us that use this. So the ABS plays a critical role in helping the government make decisions. Let's say the government wants to know how many people are unemployed or how many new businesses are then going to be opening. They can turn to the ABS for this information. This helps the government create policies and plans that are based on real facts and figures, making sure they're making the right choices for everybody here in the country. The Australian Bureau of Statistics is like a big, friendly detective agency that collects, investigates, and shares information about Australia and all its people. From the population numbers to economic data, the ABS helps us understand how our country works and how it's changing. So, next time you're curious about Australia's facts and figures, you can go to the Australian Bureau of Statistics website, which I'll put in the show notes here, and have a look through some of the data. I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast episode. If you liked it, please hit that like button, subscribe to us, maybe send it over to some of your friends and say, this is a great podcast, why don't you listen to it? It's a great way of us spreading the word about the Clever Investor podcast, growing our audience and helping everybody along the way. I'll see you again next week for another edition of the Clever Investor Podcast.
You have been listening to the Clever Investor Podcast, proudly sponsored this week by Blue Wealth Property. Are you ready to start a new investment journey? Get in touch with the industry leaders, Blue Wealth Property. Blue Wealth have a proven track record in using research to identify growth markets, and Blue Wealth have supported thousands of Australians to buy the right property in the right market at the right time. Go to bluewealth.com.au. Now it's time for a little word from today's podcast sponsor.
Have you thought about becoming a property investor but are just unsure where to start? Do you need a game plan on how to get started, or maybe you want to know where you should invest? Blue Wealth Properties, Wealth Through Properties is the perfect starting point. They are going to give you the best top tips and tricks on investing in property the clever way, and they'll run you through the latest research as part of the Australian property market update. At this event, you'll learn how thousands of everyday Aussies are using property to grow their wealth for their future, and how you can too. Upcoming dates for Wealth Through Property are September the 12th in Maroochydore. Wealth Through Property is live on the Sunshine Coast. September the 13th, Wealth Through Property is then presented live in Brisbane CBD. September the 18th, Wealth Through Property goes to first time to Bathurst, New South Wales. All events can be booked into by going to bluewealth.com.au and look in the events page.